Hello and welcome to my first guide. My name is Tespi Mitlu and I'll be going over how to play Scholar in P9 Savage. This guide is meant for new scholars to have an idea of what to look out for when progressing in this encounter. I've never made a guide like this before, so if you have any suggestions or thoughts about the video, please let me know and I'll try to add them in moving forward. So before we go over any specific information, I just wanted to go over what the purpose of this guide is and what it's going to try to help you do. So healing is kind of a complicated subject, and the purpose of this guide is to kind of simplify it a little bit and give you a healing timeline that will work for this fight. So you will be able to do a lot of damage while also keeping the raid fairly safe, even if your co-healer or party members aren't doing their share. You'll still be doing at least what you're supposed to be doing, and then you'll have room to compensate. It's important though that when you're doing your job to not think of it very strictly like, oh, I'm doing my job, so if someone else is messing up, I shouldn't compensate. You should always try to add a little bit more cushion and err on the side of safety rather than trying to min-max, especially when you haven't cleared the fight. Because otherwise you're going to create wipes that just don't need to happen, and every wipe is just going to extend the time that it takes you to clear the fight for not really any worthwhile gain. So always try to err on the side of safety, but don't be so safe that you're just not doing any damage and you're running out of mana. I'd especially look at sucker usage, because that's going to be your main bottleneck to doing a lot of good damage, and it's going to suck all your mana away if you use too many of them. I'd say if the raid is living with greater than 50% health after a raid wide and that you shielded, it's probably okay to remove the shield for that. And if they're living with less than 25%, that shield was probably really important and probably saved people's lives, or it might later, especially if people forget their mitigation, which happens all the time. So in those cases, I would just leave it there and err on the safe side, like I said. So first things first, you're going to want to start the fight with an adload deploy spread on the whole group, and then you're going to want to do this button sequence to do your opener and set things up for yourself later in the fight. One thing you should take into account though is that the Aether Flow and Dissipation in this image should be swapped for this, and that's called the Dissipation opener, and it is the main opener that you should be using in Savage this tier, as it works really well for all the fights. So it's going to feel a little weird at first, but I guarantee you it's going to make some long-term gains. So just try it. I guarantee you it's going to feel a little weird at first if you're not used to it, but it's going to feel better for your timings overall. Alright, now let's look at the fight right here. So I always start with an adload deploy on every Savage fight this tier, and that's going to mitigate the first raid wide that the boss almost always immediately does. In this case it's Gluttony's Augur, which is the weaker of the two AoEs. The one you should be more concerned about is called Ravening, which actually doesn't hit you right at the cast bar. There's a small delay from when he's eating the soul or whatever, but yeah, that's gonna be a lot more powerful, and you're gonna want to put soil and maybe also sucker on each of those depending on how well it's being mitigated from your party. But yeah, I would definitely be a lot more concerned with that AoE than the Gluttony. The Tank Buster should be more or less no interaction from you. You can throw Protraction because it's free, but it's likely not going to require much attention from you. Worst case, you might have to put Excog, but yeah. Okay, the first major damage phase here is the dual spells. So it's always going to be Partners and then the spread AoE and then Partners. The Partners does a little bit less damage than the spread AoE that I've noticed. So you're going to want to make sure that everyone's pretty much full health and some sort of mitigation is down for the spread AoE. There it didn't look like it did that much damage, but there was probably 4 mitigations on it. I saw 3 from me. I also really recommend using Seraph, and you want to use Seraph after people have gotten hit rather than before, because half of the Seraph's potency is in the heal. So if you're full health and just trying to apply the shield early, you're gonna waste half the potency. So yeah, always use Seraph pretty much after you've taken damage, if there's a sequence of damage, unless you're going to die in one hit, which you likely won't because there's not any party damage before the first hit there. I personally like to save Expedient for this phase where there's going to be a knockback. Oh yeah, another tank buster. That shouldn't really be a problem most of the time. But yeah, worst case, use Excog on it. But yeah, right here, I like to use Expedient, and then as a further safety strat, I like to use Deploy here, because if people get hit by stuff, that can sometimes save them. Obviously, you shouldn't like expect people to get hit, but in a way you kind of do. So, okay, and then right here, just dodge the AoEs, and then one thing you can do to kind of save runs is if your co-healer dies, the stacks are always targeted on the healers, so you can res them where one of the light parties should stack and then go to the other one, and then that way the light parties will still kind of work. But if you res him and then stay where you are, it will always kill both of you, and then everyone stacked with you. So you gotta keep that in mind. For that AoE that came with the light parties and stuff, you're probably just gonna want Soil. I don't think Seraph comes up in time. You should be probably using Seraph for this Ravening. I don't, because I was still figuring things out. But I believe it's like a free usage to use Seraph for this Ravening. And then you get into 11 Strike, which is actually pretty easy to heal, especially because the boss goes untargetable, so you don't have to think about like being efficient at all. I like to just put a sucker on everyone beforehand, and then kind of just use GCD heals a lot, because I don't really care about I don't know, I'm not usually very mana starved. Like right here, I'm sitting on Lucid Dreaming, and I'm not really concerned. Just kind of using Sucker in between each hit, just to make sure people can take their fire and their tower without dying. And then he's immediately going to go into Partners here, and you're going to want to kind of get people pretty healthy very quickly after 11 Strike, and then I would place a Soil or and use Expedient here. I don't use it in the clip because it's a little bit of an old clip, but yeah, Soil and Expedient, because it's going to cover the Partners and the Gluttonies after, so that's going to make that way comfier for you. Don't be afraid to use Indom, by the way. It's a very efficient healing spell and doesn't cost you that much damage and is free for mana. So here he's going to do another Ravening, and it's going to go into the windy phase. Here there's a lot of damage going out. I remember here I play it extremely safe. You're gonna definitely want to use Seraph for this part. And I used Deploy because it's gonna be quite a lot of damage with not that much time to heal in between. Basically the entire party gets hit really hard twice in a row really quickly. So I like to just use Deploy because then everyone's like fairly healthy, and it's pretty easy to top off in between. But you could probably time a better Soil than I did there so that it would cover both instances. And then this Ecliptic Meteor actually doesn't do any damage whatsoever, so you don't have to stress about healing quite yet. The thing that you do want to kind of be worried about is this Beastly Fury. It does somewhere in the ballpark of like a Gluttony's Augur, so I wouldn't be that concerned, but it is like your next like people need to be topped up point. After that, he's gonna do a Ravening, which nothing special, you know, it's gonna kind of hurt, especially because people use their mitigation on the previous thing. So here I just use Sucker, and it's like the only thing that we use, I think. Yeah, that was the only mitigation we used for that. Then he's gonna set up the knockback phase again. After this tank buster, he always does a tank buster before the knockback. Again, it shouldn't really take that much from you. The warrior obviously takes a lot because he uses home gang. But yeah, I always like to deploy an Expedient for this, just because it makes the phase a little bit easier for people to do, and it's pretty good value. The only damage going out is the knockback partners thing, and then it does the partners with the ice and fire, and then it does the Gluttony's Augur right after. So like while you're moving around dodging, you don't really have to worry about people's health too much. So it's really good to like play Soil and just like kind of have like a like passive healing going on. For Chimeric, as long as people are topped off beforehand, you don't really have to touch them at all because everybody only takes 1 hit of damage. So after everyone's gotten after everyone's gotten topped off and shielded, just don't worry about them. You don't really need to. See, everyone just gets hit once. Those guys died, but it wasn't because of healing, so don't worry about it. And it immediately goes into the spread AoEs again. People are gonna die because it's gonna target, but in your run, maybe people will die and that will just kind of be like a whatever. It shouldn't really be that stressful because it's just 1 hit. Then we go Ravening again. So nothing really crazy, just, you know, Soil, Sucker. We don't even need that much. Definitely overcompensated. So definitely when you have more item level, you're gonna not really fear the Ravenings, and you probably won't even need the shield for them. And that's about it. Boss should be pretty much dead at this point. Hope this guide was helpful. It is my first guide, so it definitely is gonna get better with time, I feel. But for now, thanks for watching.